All right, welcome back to part two of Pro Football Doc. I should do a teaser from the end. All right, thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it. We'll take a quick break and then we'll come back with the usual part two of Pro Football Doc. Welcome back, part two of Pro Football Doc podcast. I've missed you guys. It's actually been a couple of weeks. We had July 4th weekend and skip that, do the holidays and family. And then this last week, we did a different version, right? For those of you who saw it, I was fortunate enough to be involved in the Pony League World Series, West Zone, 8U, Machine Pitch, Pony Pinto League World Series. There's my little son right there clowning around. Yes, this is me in baseball pants. Was fortunate enough to be their head coach and got a new crew of kids, added some kids, made it to the World Series. We actually won our pool, believe it or not. And in addition to that, we made it to the semifinals of the World Series. So there's another picture. There's my son there clowning around. We had a baller chain for the kids, etc. We had some good fun there. Nothing special, but that took me out of action last week, other than that little mini podcast that we did from the field there. We finally, in the semifinals, ran into a buzzsaw. But, one of my prouder moments is calling timeout, which I didn't do throughout the series because they're 8-year-old kids, gathering them together when they were having a bad inning on the field and saying, guys, go have fun, nothing to tell you, but I just wanted to come out and hand out some Skittles. So I gave all the kids some Skittles. I mean, they're 8. It was all about fun. We had a ton of fun with everybody. And we're back at it, regular stuff now. And thanks for watching. And I think that Chuck Liddell piece I thought it was cool. Just chatting with him, I thought you'd want to hear about his points of view of some things. So I wanted to get into first NBA Finals, just to talk about a few things here. NBA Finals. Now, yes, I wrote this 20 days ago. Giannis season likely over. Now, what I said in this when he hyperextended his knee is that A, he did not have an ACL tear, which was true. B, he was going to miss the rest of the Eastern Conference Finals, which he did. And yes, here's where I was wrong. I thought that he would likely miss the rest of including the finals. But he has made a fantastic and quicker than usual recovery. Now, why is that? Well, if you really go look at it, and I did not know this at the time, but he apparently had done it before. If you really look at some of the things, we go here. Giannis, knee injury, he heard it right before the pandemic in similar fashion. And then earlier this season, he had a similar, it was called a capsular sprain at the time. So my point is simply this. Let's call a spade a spade. Where I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I was incorrect in assuming that he was likely out for the rest of the NBA Finals. Sure, everyone thought ACL tear looked bad, and I said it was okay. You can take my silver lining there. But the reason why is, if you think about it, and you hear me talk about it a lot, when you sprain your ankle and tear ligaments in your ankle, it does this, or your knee, it does this. When it heals like this, not like this, not as tight as before. So this is why I say when you see a bad ankle turn, if it's the first time this happens and the healing is longer, if it's the second time when it's already loose, you don't do as much damage. And I think that's what happened with Giannis. This has happened before. I did not know that, which is why we have new surprises coming up for you guys related to basketball and other things. Hard to cover so many different sports. But in any case, this is his third time with this type of hyperextension injury. And that's where I misjudged it. That's why he could come back. And he's doing a great job all along with that. So I wanted to clear that up and own up to any perceived mistake there and go from there. But with that being said, look at this here. This is Chris Paul in game 4, kind of grabbing at his left hamstring. And you can see that sleeve or that undergarment that he has on the left side all the way up. He's had a history of problems with his hamstring. And it seemed to act up some towards the end of last series. And if you look at his performance, Chris Paul this time had a good game 1. Game 2, 3 started slipping. 4 and 5 not as effective. Going in, I think he almost became the favorite to win the MVP title. But now he has been less than himself. I think what we're seeing in the Milwaukee and Bucks and Phoenix Suns series is Giannis's injury has been doing this, and Chris Paul has been doing this. And the 2 best players on each team are headed in different direction in terms of health and injury. I don't think Chris Paul's been as explosive, and I think that's due to his hamstring. Meanwhile, Giannis has proven very, very strong, and his knee, I think, is relation to his recurring knee issue. Therefore, it was easier recovery for him in terms of what's going on. All right, let's cover a couple other topics here. Move on to some football-related topics. Tom Brady, the GOAT. A lot of chatter how he played through a completely torn MCL. Not happening. Not the case. There's no way that any NFL player played through an entire season with a complete ACL tear. I am not disparaging Tom Brady. He's not the one who put out the story. I just think it's a false narrative, a narrative that Tom doesn't need. He's the GOAT. He doesn't need this story to inflate he's done and been doing. This was actually his 3rd MCL surgery. No question he needed surgery. No question his MCL was injured. No question he's a tough guy. But also no question about a third of every team has players playing through that MCL that's a little bit stretched. Now, Tom's, this is 3rd time. In 2008, when he tore his ACL, he tore his MCL as well. And when you tear your MCL, it stretches. And that time, he actually had surgery in 2008, which is a little unusual, surgery to repair it. And that MCL wound got infected. And he needed a second surgery to wash it out. Anytime a wound is infected or tissue is infected, it doesn't heal as well. So that MCL probably, instead of healing, tearing, getting sewed and healing tight, probably, frayed some. And thus, chronically, when he re-injured it in New England, it gradually got worse and worse. And thus, he ultimately needed the surgery here, which he'll be fine. But I just think it's a false narrative. If you look here, when he lateraled the Lombardi, a couple things you'll see right here. Obviously, I think it's a great play, but that's a little bit of a sideways movement. It was like a rugby toss. That would stress your MCL. And this picture and the picture of him when he came off the boat, that's not a knee brace on his left knee. That's a knee sleeve. A knee sleeve does not provide the same amount of stability as a knee brace. Now, during all games since his ACL, he wears a ACL brace on his front lead leg, left leg, and that does stabilize any MCL laxity. But he wasn't wearing it on a boat that potentially rocks. He was wearing a simple sleeve. That's further proof to me that it was not complete MCL tear, and it really never was. Not that it's big of a deal, but as Chuck Liddell said, Chuck didn't need injuries to you need injuries as an excuse. And I don't think Tom's making this excuse. He played with an injured MCL. He played with the knee that needed surgery afterwards. That happens all the time in the NFL. I don't think he's the GOAT. He doesn't need anything else. I think he still is the GOAT with or without this injury. And just glad to see that he should be ready to go again come the regular season here, come training camp here, timing wise. But it is his third MCL surgery. Let's go a little more here to Saquon Barkley. You guys remember when he talked about Saquon Barkley? There was all this video, Saquon Barkley, look at how good he is. He's going to be great. He's ready to go. And on this podcast and at Outkick, we talked about Saquon Barkley. What does it really mean? Yes, he had additional injuries. But at the time, he said, look, he looks great in video, but we pointed out where he wasn't 100%. Now what do we hear? Quote, I don't know. We'll see. His annual camp. Will he be full go to start training camp? I don't know. We'll see, he said. Same answer for week 1 of the season. I don't know. We'll see. Saquon Barkley is doing very well. And don't be afraid of what's coming out here. But he's not 100%. He won't be 100% week 1 of the season. He'll get there. He's going to do well this year. But I expect his latter half of the season to be better than the first half of the season. All right, let's cover some other things here. What do we have here? Oh, this was super interesting and unusual. Saskatchewan Roughriders. 4 people tore their Achilles in the same workout. Linebacker Larry Dean, DB Nelson Lacombo, DN Freddie Bishop, running back Jonathan Femi Cole. Crazy. 4 Achilles tears for a team during all of training camp would be unheard of. 4 in a season is unheard of. 4 in one day at the same practice? I'm still trying to figure that out why. And apparently coaches weren't really on the field. Was it a lack of acclimation deal? Maybe. Really don't know for sure. I mean, the bottom line is that's just craziness in terms of what's happening there. We'll have to figure that out. Let's see what else we got here before we wind up here. Michael Irvin. Excuse me for one. Michael Irvin. If you really look at what Michael Irvin is saying here is interesting. If you're unvaccinated, that means you don't want to win badly enough. Now, I've been saying for a while now, I'm not saying whether vaccines are great, they're not great. I'm vaccinated. I get it, it's an individual decision. And I think that's what Michael Irvin is saying here too. Because, and this is what I've been saying, because of the competitive advantages to getting vaccinated. Because they're significant. I'm not saying it's right. You probably see me tweeting and talking about the vaccine carrot. That vaccine carrot is big. It is absolutely a competitive advantage, not only for practices, but potential sit-outs for the inevitable positive test due to close contacts. There are huge advantages to having your team in the 85% threshold, huge advantages to being vaccinated. I do believe you should be vaccinated, an adult. We don't need to talk about kids. You can argue whether 25-year-olds need to be vaccinated or not. Look, the rules are the rules. The NFL rules agreed to by the PA are set up to favor the teams that are vaccinated. So what Michael Irvin is saying here is legitimate. And sure enough, where are we at now? 13 NFL teams over 85%. There's a couple apparently still below 50, but 13. So for a couple months, I've been saying the vast majority of NFL teams will become vaccinated because of the competitive advantage. That's what Michael Irvin's saying. Now we're at 13. My guess is by the training camp in another week, we'll be well over 50%. By the time the season rolls around, I think it will be few and far between the team that isn't all the way there. I I can't guarantee 32 out of 32, but it'll be high 20s, if not 30s, in terms of the number of teams that reach the 85% threshold, just because the way the deal is set up. That's where the advantage is. All right. And then this was an interesting tidbit that I saw, and we'll end with this week here. The NFL has been trying to get to 18 regular season games for more than a decade. You guys have heard me before. I said, when they added 17 games, I said, why didn't they add a second bye week, right? It made more TV, more revenue. We've talked about that concept. Second bye week helps player health. It offsets adding the length of the season. I think I finally figured it out. The only reason I got, and I think it was from Amy, blanking on her name right now, Amy Trask, Raiders extraordinaire. Anyways, TV might not love the dilution of games, but let me tell you, the way games are going, the way the quality, it's not TV. I think the reason the NFL is always smart, they're the smartest people around. I think they saw a second bye week with a 17-week regular season, 17 regular season games as feasible. But I think they're saving that second bye week concept for when they add 18 games to get to a 20-week regular season with 18 regular season games. I think that's what they're waiting for, because 18 is ultimately their goal. So to me, it's always fun to figure out mysteries here and there, but that's my thought. I always thought mine was reasonable. Most of you listeners thought it was reasonable, but I think I finally figured out why the NFL did it and didn't push for a second bye week with the 17th game, because they're waiting for the 18th game to push that second bye week concept to get that through. Anyways, thanks for watching Pro Football Doc podcast and listening. Thanks to Chuck Liddell for coming on. I appreciate that. I thought that was good insight to sports in general and timely in nature. And lots of new seasons coming. I already did a fantasy draft, Scott Fish Bowl 11. Someone told me, at least by standard fantasy pros projections, that I ranked pretty well in the draft, but I didn't get the quarterbacks that I wanted. I had to. Last year, I was lucky in Scott Fish Bowl 10, where I drafted. Actually, I'll show you where my draft is while we're here. Why not? I'll show you. Let's find it. Here's my draft, where we're still not done. Actually, here we go. Actually, I'm up on the clock. So, guys, who should I draft? Help me. So this is the Roots League division in Scott Fish Bowl 11. So I had the 5th pick. I drafted Travis Kelce. Last year, people in my league thought I was 0 running backs. No, I just didn't have any value. And then I drafted later and later the running backs. And I drafted Patrick Mahomes first last year, Tyreek Hill second, and Aaron Rodgers in the 3rd round. And they rode me to a league or division, whatever you call it, just among the 12 guys, first place in the regular season and into the playoffs. This year, you can see I'm a little lower on the quarterbacks. I got Cousins in 5 and waited too long and ended up with Daniel Jones. But meanwhile, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Myles Gaskin, Terry McLaurin, et cetera, some backup with Jameis Winston. 2 kickers. Yeah, the 2 kickers we knew this year. This was a glitch in the programming. I did not actually pick the second kicker, but I didn't complain about it. We just let it go. And I'm up on the board next. So having some fun, a couple other fantasy drafts coming up. But we're going to have our preseason preview out shortly, working on that. Some draft information out, profootballdoc.com. Look for lots of new announcements. Give us a nice rating on the podcast here. Sorry for the short vacation, but it was worth it for my son and the July 4th holiday. And thanks to Chuck Liddell. Thanks to all you guys for watching. And we'll see you next week. And as the season really hours ahead, training camp start next week. Pro Football Doc back full force and stronger with new announcements to come. Thanks for watching and listening.